Welcome to class today. This is October 9, our 10 a.m. session. Hopefully you had a good night's rest. So let's go ahead and dive into our lesson for today. As always, we use the PowerPoint to do a review, talk about what we've um, encountered in our last session, what we will encounter today, and what we are expected to do so that we can achieve our goal that's in mind. 2 professional certifications, 5 digital badges, and 4 of the AI certificates. So what did we do yesterday? Yesterday evening, you guys had lots of work to do. So still from 10-6, you have those 2 essays to do. I saw that, I believe Angel already completed that one. So make sure you go back and do those 2 essays, get those done. Maybe you guys are busy and you need the weekend to do that. Make sure that you do that. All the information that you need is basically found in the document itself. You can find additional information online from Pega Academy, from the lectures that we talked about. All that information is there. So you shouldn't have to go searching. It's more of collecting the right information, putting it together, and adding your own twist to it. That's the way I understand as I read through them, and I do read through them. I have an aid of an AI tool to help me do that. I can quickly go through, make sure that you hit the right points, and can give you some guidance and instructions. The more you can write about a topic, the better off you will be when it comes to, number 1, passing the certification, understanding the questions. Number 2, trying to realize a skill when you work on your project to develop that. And number 3, you can have a conversation with people when you're sitting for an interview. So that's why the essays are very important, so that it's an open-ended question. If they're going to ask you questions in an interview, you need to know how to answer those. Okay, so yesterday evening, you had 4 more essays that you have to do. Now, I promise you, if you look through the schedule, it's not 4 every week. It's not 3 every week. It's 2 in most cases that you have to do. In some weeks, there's not any. You'll also find out that the first 6 weeks, you're doing a lot of essays because I need to make sure that you are understanding the information. When we get into SAE, you probably do a essay every other week, or maybe every 3 days. You'll do one on Monday or one on Thursday. So it's a different flavor. What I'm saying is, I want to encourage you, do the exercises, do the work, do the essays. Very, very important, so you can get your foundational knowledge. So that's what we did yesterday. Let's see here. The video for that 6 p.m. session, as always, I send you the link to WebEx, along with putting it out on your YouTube channel. And you have the recordings that summarize with our AI process that allows the podcast, a document with the information, and of course, the mind map that's there. So for today's session, what are we going to cover? Well, we're going to get into the Pega environment today, but we're going to do that more in reference to use cases, user stories. So we want to make sure that we understand that whole concept. Why is a user story important? How is it implemented? How should it be implemented? Where are those user stories? So that's where we're really going to focus this morning. Your exercises is there's a document, a PDF that you need to read through. I mentioned that the other day. That PDF, I did get it translated into Spanish, so it's one out there. I'll show you where that is. You need to listen to the first 12 minutes, 13 minutes of this YouTube. It will talk about use cases, how to implement use cases. It is from one of the previous courses. They were doing the exact same thing. They were just doing it with an earlier version. You have the latest version, but it's the same project that we have people to build. And we have a user story template. I'll go over all of those assets for you. Make sure that you're comfortable with that, because you will be required to create 10 user stories. So again, there's a lot of work to be done, a lot of hands-on skills. You're not going to understand the Pega development process unless you actually spend time working on the skill. So that's why that's important. And then let's see, so let me go back to this. So for today's session, when we talk about user stories, and you'll be required to create user stories, I've already created a folder for October the 9th for 1009. You'll see that there is a template for your essays. So that's there for you. And you have templates for your user stories. I put it in English and in Spanish. You guys will use the Spanish version, and it's already set up for you. So that's set, and that's good to go. So when I talk about the resources that you'll be able to utilize, and I'm going to show you how to define a user story based upon your use case. We'll take a look at that, and I'll show you how to put it into the system. And that will be the end of our concepts about the 10% that we've talked about the use cases, about Pega Express, about ECO, the benefits of PED, Pega Express delivery, and everything that's surrounding that. This evening, we'll come back and we'll start a whole new chapter, a whole new unit. We're through with that 10%. Now we're going to focus on 30%. So the next couple of sessions, a few sessions, I should say, all the next week, we're going to focus on 30% of the certification and all the skill that's associated with that, that goes along with what we call case management. Let me show you the 30%. In the certification, yesterday, we looked at the 10% that we've already covered, and I showed you there in the study guide the answers. From that answer, you saw a definition and a description. You saw an image or navigation, if you had to navigate to it through the platform, and you saw a use case when it should be used. So we're through with that 10%. You should be well versed in that information. Now, over the next week or two, we're going to look at this 30%. Case management. We're going to cover every one of the topics in detail. I'll give you examples of every one of the aspects that they're asking you about. In the study guide, we'll have answers for all of that. So there's no reason for you not to score high, if not to pass on the first 40%. That's what we're going to cover. Things like case lifecycle, you should know what that is. I've already talked about a status, new, open, pending, resolve, adding instructions. I showed you how in one instance, I went and I got ready to create a collect information, and it gave me an option there right below the status where I could type in some instructions. Add a service level agreement. Now, we hadn't talked much about that, but I did mention an SLA. An SLA allows you to set a time that someone has to complete that work. Remember, work is a case type that gets routed to a user. A user has so much time that they can work on it. So we'll talk about urgency, deadline, past deadline. Route assignment to users. Remember, I said building an enterprise solution in Pega means that it's probably going to be touched by several people. And when it moves from one person to the next person, in Pega terminology, we call that routing, R-O-U-T-I-N-G, routing. It moves from one person to the next. There may be a service representative that may enter in the information, for instance, a claim. Then you have someone else who actually looks at the claim. maybe a claim specialist to determine what needs to be done. After they look at it, they may send it over to a claims adjuster. Claim adjuster sends it, finishes, and may send it over to finance or payment. And so you see how when we have a case, as we're moving from one person to the next, that's probably one of the stages. That's a definition of a stage, if you remember that. A stage is a change in ownership, a change in status, or it just logically goes together. In my example, when it moves from one person to the next, probably another stage or a change in the status also. And then that person has to work on it. Open pending, new open pending resolve. Remember, and we can, as long as we use those prefixes, we can put a suffix and we can put some additional information there. Sending email, sending a correspondence. Oh, that's pretty easy, right? But in Pega, we have a automation that will help us do that. Looking for duplicate cases. Now, we hadn't talked about that yet, but that'll be a new venture that we'll look into. Sometimes maybe multiple cases out there, and you need to determine which one do I need to choose, one or the other. Here's an instance of a duplicate case. I may call in one day, and that happens, and I'm trying to get something fixed. I open a claim or I open an issue, and the phone drops. Person that I'm talking to, they had started the case, and then all of a sudden there's an interruption in my conversation. Well, call centers, you typically can't get back to the same person, right? So I call back, I get a different person. The person starts entering in my information, and based upon what we consider a duplicate, if it's the person's, for instance, if it's their same name, it's their same address, and if they own this particular device, if those three equal to another case that's out there, then it's probably a duplicate case. So now that customer service representative could say, I don't need to complete this one. I found another one that's out there. So that's an example of a duplicate case. Identify and add optional actions. Very easy to do. Think of an optional action as something outside the normal flow. Now, it's a little different than the alternate stage or the exception that we talked about. Now, this optional action, that has to do with maybe I need a pop-up window to come up so I can click that and then go back to the main flow. So we'll look at flow decisions. So we have conditionals, we have when rules, we have a decision table, a decision tree, pause and resume. We may have a case that after I open a claim, I have to send it to the customer, and then I need to wait for that customer to reply. So I can set a wait state on that particular case until I get a reply back. I can skip a stage, so that's more like conditional processing. I do this when something occurs, or otherwise I'll do something else. I can configure a child case. Child case is more attuned to, I have a parent-child. Now we're looking at that parent-child relationship. So we'll talk about that and how to use some of our automation shapes, how to create and manage a team of users, and that has to do a lot with personas. And then we'll hop right into 15%. Sometimes they'll combine this information. How to configure a data object. So what is data? Data is the information that's needed in a case. So we'll take a look at that. We'll look at how to capture that from a UI, different types of data that we have, different views, how to calculate data, how do we do automatic calculation, how do we validate data, how do we know that when someone enters in the information, it's the right information, and then how do we manipulate that data. So that's where we're headed. I want you to know. But today, let's finish up this 10% that we're talking about. Matter of fact, it's actually part of the application development, managing application development, user stories, feedback, and bugs. You may be wondering, well, why are we doing it now? Because we need to understand that to get our project up and going. that interview project concepts. We talked about it here. So even though it's not in the same order in the certification for the 10%, we still need to understand how to do that. And occasionally we will teach information in its logical order, which may not be the same order as the certification. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into it. Make sure that you have your community edition open so that if I need to make reference to that, you can go with me and you can follow me along. I want you to go to the projects. So go to the projects folder, open it up. Let me explain to you what some of the files are. Probably easier if you download it instead of opening it online, depending upon how fast your internet is. Okay, give me a thumbs up if you're there. I want to make sure everybody's on board. I tried to talk a little bit more so that it gave more people time to join. So give me a thumbs up if okay, got it. Okay, wonderful. Thank you for participating. So we're at the projects folder. In the projects folder, we have the user stories template. So I made a copy of that into the complete folder for you for today, for October 9th. So we'll move and I'll show that to you later on. But here's a template of user stories that will allow you to, or give you an example of what it would look like. Here is a document in Spanish of the use case. So this is a use case. A use case is from the interview of the business unit to help us determine what their case is. What is it that they want? What are they trying to accomplish? From that interview process, and that's exactly what that document is, it's an interview of two people talking, going back and forth, so that you can get an understanding of what you are trying to develop and what you're going to create. Of course, here's the skills guide. So that's the first chapter that we've already talked about that I've lectured over, but I put that for you for reference. And then here's an example of some user stories. So what I want to do is I want to go over the use case with you so that you would get an understanding of what an interview would look like. And then I want to get into the user stories, and then I'll show you how to create user stories. And you'll be responsible for creating 10 user stories, putting them into the user story template, and uploading those into the complete document for October the 9th. You guys ready? All right, put your seatbelts on. So let's take a look at this document that's here. And I have it already up and running. There we go. So you should open that document. I turned mine into a PDF, but you should be able to open this document. And it gives you a user story. So let's take a look at that. I'll read it in English, but you should be able to, of course, it's in Spanish for you. I have my English version. So we are interviewing a area manager. We're interviewing a manager. We're building, they are interested in, and this is at the University of Nexito, an application to study abroad. Right now, Peter is the manager, the area manager for the study abroad application department at Nexito University. He's been there for several years, but they've always had to use paper. Now they want to automate it because there's so many errors that continue to occur when they use this paper-based system. So they're wanting to automate it. They want a web-based option so that people who are applying for a semester to study abroad will have the ability to do that. So Peter is an expert. He's what we call a SME, a system matter expert. He understands the entire process. He's been around it for years. He's done it from a manual perspective. Now we are interviewing Peter to make sure that we can capture his experience, that we can convert his words into a Pega solution that will be based upon an application that has multiple case types. Each case type will have its own case life cycle of it from the beginning to the end. It's happy pass, it's alternate pass, and those optional actions that may occur. So here's the transcript, and I won't read through the whole transcript. I'm expecting you to read through the whole transcript. Maybe something that you want to partner up with someone in the class, if you know someone, so that you can read it together. But anyway, just to start out so that you understand some of it, it says, dear Mr. Meyer, thank you very much for taking the time for our interview. Of course, with pleasure. So today we want to talk about a key process of an international application in your department at the university. Which key process do you want to digitize in the first step in support with the planned application? Now we're getting into the interview process. If you're working, especially if you're a consultant, then you need to know how to interview subject matter experts to draw the proper information out that's important to you to understand how you're going to develop your application in Pega. Well, he replies by saying, first, there is an electrical support application. So far, all applications have always been done manually or with the help of Excel. In some cases, we don't know whether students have already applied or not. If we could do this completely electronically with the help of a database, we would certainly be able to put a stop to the application chaos. So first of all, he even sees the pain point that they have grown beyond a spreadsheet. They don't have a database. It's manually done. Now they don't know if a student has applied or not. If they're reapplying, they don't have a way to look at it, and it causes chaos. So that's an example of what's really going on here. Let's go ahead and read one more line. I see. Accordingly, you would like to create an electronic application through an input that would allow students to apply to at an international office with their desire to study abroad. Correct. Exactly. Student can log in to the study abroad portal. So now you know that we talk about personas. One of the personas will be a student wanting to have an interface into this case type, want them to log into the portal with the Nexito address and then start a new application from there and see the status of their current application. So they can either start a new application or look at the status of their initial application. All right, so let's read one more. Let's read one more so we can get a feel here for what's actually going on. So then it says, what would be the simplest way to design the process initially from your point of view? The expert comes back and says, on the counter start page, the student should have the possibility to look at the universities available for selection. For this purpose, we will provide corresponding information for all universities. I have bought a sample set of data with this information that I have in mind. So we have an attachment at the bottom, but basically what he's saying is if the university has other universities that are participating, or whoever the associated universities are, it's probably going to be a drop-down list. So that's what there. It's going to have to be in the database. When they get to that first page, students want to look at it and say, I think I want to study abroad in Misala, or I want to study abroad in New York. So should be able to find a university in that particular region and can start from there. So that's an example of an interview. Read the whole interview process. It's not that long, really, really short, but it's showing you a really good example of an interview and the information that you have to glean in order for you to build your solution. Here's the data. Some of the data that's being provided tells you that it's the University of Georgia in the United States. Gives you a description of the university. Some of this is actually real. If you go out to the University of Georgia, they are one of our top tier universities in the world or in the United States. There's some pictures of the University of Georgia. Historically, it's been around probably since the 1800s, one of the older universities. These are some expectations. So read through these. This information has been added to help you understand the solution that we are going to do. Okay, so step number one, you want to read through this document. Read through the document. This is called a use case. A use case. From the use case, you will identify what does the student want. Remember, a user story is the what, when, and why. What do you want it? When do you want it? Why do you need it? What, when, and why. That's a good user story. It's well formed when it can answer those three. A group of user stories, we call that an epic. So an epic says, this is the whole student experience. That may be one epic. Another epic may be, well, the student's entering in information. That's a persona. How about the administrator? Someone like Peter, someone on the other end. Well, we have to have another portal. That makes sense, right? Have to have an administrative portal so that the administrator can then see how many people have enrolled, where they have enrolled, and what the status of the enrollment is. And they have to have the ability to communicate and notify the students that they have been approved or selected for a particular study abroad program. And probably they want information about, well, is this the first time that this student has enrolled, or did they enroll last semester and they're wanting to do another semester, or do a different semester, do another semester at a different location. So you will build all of this in your solution. Any questions? Does it make sense? Give me a thumbs up if you understand that you have to read through this document. All right, wonderful. All right, so let's move this to the side. And let's take a look at well-formed use cases. So there's another document. Open this document here. So these are really good examples. I don't want you to use these directly, but most of them will pertain to what you guys will be working on, which is absolutely fine. But I want you to put it into your own words. This is by far, this is not comprehensive. This is just an example of some user stories that I've extracted out of reading the use case. So I read the use case. Now I've gone in and say, I'm going to create some user stories. So I wrote these in a document first, and then I'll show you how to put them into the spreadsheet. And then I'll also show you how to put them into the user stories that's on the Pega platform. So make sure that you have your community edition platform up and running. That'll be the last task that we will do. All right, so let's take a look at this. This is a good document to help you form your user stories. In this case, here's a list of my user stories. It's about the application. My case type is the study abroad application. My methodology, of course, I use Pega Express Delivery. That has the 4 phases. Remember those 4 phases? We have it's a iterative process that we use throughout the whole application. And we have not talked about security, but we're going to create what's called an access group. It's the security we're going to give to certain people that have to approve access for students who are going through this process. An epic, remember I said an epic is a series or a group of user stories that explains one complete interaction. User stories are very granular. They're going to contain a portion of the interaction. A user story might be, well, I want to log in, I have to put user ID password. Well, okay, that's a portion of it. But an epic would say one user story talks about the login, the next user story talks about looking up students, the last user story talks about submitting the application. 3 user stories in that one epic. The first user story that I created, 1.1, you'll see, is associated with Epic 1 student application submission. User story 1.1, university information display. So how do I want the information to be displayed? As a student, now when you write a use case, you need to indicate who it is. So I say, as a student. Now I've answered the question of who. Remember, we have the what and the why that we have to also address. So as a student, I want to view available partner universities with detailed information and current weather. Why? This is the what, but this is the why. So that I can make an informed decision about where to study abroad. That is considered a well-formed user story. It addresses the who. It addresses the what. What are you asking for? It addresses the why. Why do you want it? Who, what, and why. Well-formed user story. Those are the components that you need for every one of your user stories. Now, this is not a difficult exercise. Very simple exercise. You identify who it is, you identify what they want, you explain why they want it. Gives you complete understanding of what's needed to be done. You need acceptance criteria. Acceptance criteria says what? If I do this, then the user will approve that that's exactly the experience that they want. So in this case, it says what? I need to display the university information. That should have names, location, descriptions, GPA, available subjects, website, logos, photos. Now, you may not get all this the first time. You may not get it right the first time, but we can always update user stories, because remember, we put them in the system that's called the backlog, and the backlog has to be reviewed to make sure that it is well formed, in that it is complete, in that it meets the definition of done, DOD. It meets the definition of done. That's what we call the DOD, definition of done. Once a user story meets the definition of done, then we take it off the backlog and say, put it into a sprint. Now I need you to, as a business architect, I need you to design it. As a business, as a system architect, I need you to implement it. So that's the process. Acceptance criteria. Number 2, we want current weather to be displayed for each university location. Number 3, at least 3 universities are available for selection. Now, remember, this is my perspective from my conversation with Peter. You may decide that you want to show 5, or that you want to show 2 from each geographical region, 1 from South America, or 2 from South America, 2 from North America, 2 from Europe, 2 from Asia, 2 from the Middle East. That's up to you. That's you interpreting the conversation with the SME, the system matter expert. And then number 3, information is presented in an easy to read format on the dashboard. Now, that gives you a lot of latitude when you're a business architect, system architect, that you write that. So you're not writing to tell them how to display the information. You don't say things like put it in a drop down, or it needs to be part of a group of controls in the bottom right hand corner. That's not what you do in a user story. You're explaining the who, the what, the why, what the acceptance criteria is, without trying to explain how to implement it. This is not about implementation. This is more about information that a business architect can use for design. And then finally, the third component is business value. You need to determine, of all the work that has to be done, is it high, is it medium, is it low? Those are the 3 components that you look at. Is it high, is it medium, or is it low? Let's look at another one, just to make sure that you got it. User story 1.2. It is part of the Epic 1, student personal information entry. Now, what is the who, what, and the why? As a student, identified as a student, I want to enter my personal information for the application. Why? So that the international office has my contact details for the abroad program. Very simple to do. What is the acceptance criteria? The acceptance criteria is system will pre-populate name, date, field of study, social security type of number, that's the matriculation number, from the student database. What is the second acceptance criteria? I need the ability to update, enter private information, address, my parents' address. Third information, I need to have required fields, that all of those required fields must be completed before I can process the application. And then number 4, validate my data to ensure that it's formatted properly. What is its business value? Business value is high. So it is required for the application process. Simple, straightforward, but very important. Who, what, why at the top. Acceptance criteria. And what is the business value? And you have to rate that. Okay, so that's from the student's perspective. Let's see if we can find one that is from a different persona. Let's go to Epic 2. Go to Epic 2. Okay. Epic 2, user story 2.1, duplicate application check, duplicate application check. So now, here's an example of, we want to make sure that this person didn't submit an application twice for two different places. That wouldn't make sense, right? You don't want them to try to go to two different places at the same time, or submit to two different places and get accepted by both, and then it knocks out someone else. So you got to have some criteria around that. So in this case, this is going to be the responsibility of the international office staff member. This user story says what? Who is the who? As an international office staff member, that's who. What do they want? I want the system to automatically check for duplicate applicants. And why? So that students cannot submit multiple applications for the same semester. Great example. Great user story. It answers the who, what, and why from a different persona, which will be the international office staff member. So you need to have user stories, or an epic, a set of user stories for each persona that you identify from that interview. So what is the acceptance criteria? The system would automatically check the matriculation number or the social security number. If it's an existing application that's been selected for the semester. If it's a duplicate, the student receives a rejection email with an explanation. So now you have to create an email, send it to the student. The case automatically closes if the duplicate is found. So now, if I find a duplicate, I then close, or I resolve my case. It goes from being open to being resolved complete, or resolved for some reason, resolved rejected. That might be the status that we set it to. No manual intervention is required for duplicate detection. So once we set up the criteria that says, maybe if it's the same name, if it's the same social security number, and I find that in the system, he or she's trying to create another one, hey, that's considered a duplicate because those two pieces of data match. Then you want to say, email, you reject it, explain why. Of course, you've already submitted an application, you can't submit two. Business value is high. So here you see the business value, it's set to high. Now, I've given you two examples or three examples of use cases, two different epics. You don't have to be as elaborate to say it's epic 1, epic 2. It's fine if you want to do that. It's an easier way to divide everything and see it clearly. But I just need 10 use cases. 10 use cases, some from the student, some from office staff members. You may say, well, what if it's a office staff manager? If you're reading that and you think there needs to be an office staff manager that's going to be part of that process, then we need that to be there also. If there's some payment that has to happen as part of the process, then you probably need to have payment processing involved. But again, this is, I think, a good example that'll get you started. Many of these you will use in your own customized way, because these are actual good use cases. I've looked at them and I said, hey, this is what I think that this is asking. But use your own, create your own, put it in your own words. So does everyone understand how to create a well-formed user story? It answers the who, what, and why, have acceptance criteria, and what the business value is. Give me a thumbs up if you understand that. And then I'm gonna show you how to do that. All right, wonderful. Wonderful. Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Very good. Very good. All right. So now let me take this concept and let's put it into practice. You have your template. I'll show you the template. Did I had it open? Oh, my internet is good up here in New York. So, all right, here we go. So I put some examples in here for you. They may or may not be what you want for your own user stories, but at the bottom you see two tabs, one in Spanish, one in English. Put a few more in English. It was easier for me to write these in English. And you see that some of them, complexity is medium, priority for the future, nice to have, must have, acceptance criteria, description, the name of the user story, all of that, right? This particular spreadsheet, you should be able to find it in the complete. So go to complete, go to the 1009, and you'll see that it's there for you. So that's the one that you're going to use. Remember, you have to come here because this is the only folder that it will allow you to update, to download and upload. All the others are read only. So you have to come here and you can open up the user stories, download it. It's a template. Use your name, follow that format, first name underscore last name. And you can start adding your user stories. Yeah. Don't worry about this master data. Master data shouldn't be there. Okay. So you don't have to do anything. Matter of fact, let me delete this. You don't have to do anything for the master data. You just need your user story. I didn't see all of this. Let me delete the summary export too. There we go. Now you got the user story. That's all you need. This is just an example of a user story you'll create from your 10 user stories here. Download that document, rename it, first name, last name, for your user stories. So it's not an essay. So it's for your user stories, and you can go from there. Okay. Matter of fact, let me change the name. It's not an essay. This is just for user stories. Okay. Now you guys should be able to see it. Now let me do a refresh. There we go. All right. So this first one, first name, last name, user stories. That will be the one that you can download. Add your 10 user stories to. And that way I can then go and check it. Okay. The last and final step is to show you how to add it to the platform. Now, once you enter the 10, and this is more for your skill. This is so you'll know that I'm creating these user stories, I'm putting them into a spreadsheet, but at the end of the day, I'll have to enter them into the Pega platform in App Studio as a user story. So now that workbench that we're going to add them into is a collaborative tool between the business architect and the system architect. All right, so let's take a look at that. Oh, but before I move on, is everyone good on understanding that you come to the complete folder to the October 9th, download the spreadsheet, and you're in your 10 use user stories. So give me a thumbs up. Make sure you understand that. You can download it. All right, great. Okay, so we've done 1 and 2. I've given you good examples of user stories, so you can read over that. You need to make sure you read through the definition of that use case, or read through that whole use case. Okay, I need you to do that, number 1. Number 2, start formulating your user stories. Download this spreadsheet so you can add those to your user story. And then number 3, for the sake of skill, then I want you to go to Studio. Go to your community edition, and it doesn't matter which one of the applications you get into. If you want to get into one that's already that we created from the blueprint, there's already some user stories out there. Absolutely fine to do that. If you want to get into the application we created from scratch, then you can do that also. So it's not going to affect anything. Again, these environments are for us to be able to play in and to understand certain tasks that we need to complete. So in this case, I am in my App Studio. So let's start into App Studio, but I do want to show you both of them. So when we get into the SAE section, you'll understand that you can do it in either App Studio or in Dev Studio, because this is a collaborative tool. The BAs, business architects, the SA system architects, they're working together in this continuous iteration of a sprint using Scrum technology and using Pega Express delivery to help to deliver these things. All right. So here's the workbench. Stories. I happen to be in the application where I have the existing, I use the blueprint. So you see that there are user stories already there. Now it's really easy to create a user story. If I select stories and I click on the plus, I do create a story, and it opens up an area to let me create a story. It's that simple, right? I won't do it right now. Now, let's say that I go from App Studio, and let me go down to Dev Studio. All right, now I'm in Dev Studio, but you see that I don't see the workbench up here. It does exist, but it's in the bottom left-hand corner. See the bottom left-hand corner. Go down to the bottom left-hand corner, and you see the Agile Workbench. Again, it looks exactly the same. Why? Because it's a collaborative tool. BAs and SAs can enter in or update user stories. The more appropriate place is back in the App Studio. So let's go back to App Studio. Again, you see all my user stories. Let me show you what it would look like if you get into your application from scratch. I believe I had a wealth management application that I created. So now I get into my wealth management. Now, I hope you understand that you can switch from one application to another. In Pega, you're working for a company, you probably will be working on 2, maybe 3 applications at a time. So this environment gives you the capability to switch from one application to the other application. In my wealth management system, if I go to the workbench, there are no user stories. Why? I created it from scratch. Nothing has been added, nothing has been created. That's typically the way it looks. So I'm going to work out this environment as if I need to put in the user stories as a business architect so that my team can see that information out there And maybe my lead business architect will start designing a case life cycle, create cases, and start the process. All right, so let's take a look at, here's a story. I want to add that first story. So I'll create a story. Now, let me show you something else you can do. I like this other feature. I can click on this button, and it's the application profile. And I can add a new story. Two different ways to do the same thing. Let's do it this way, and then I'll show you how to do it the other way. But I happen to like this style. It's going to open up to the same thing. It just shows me a list of my user stories. For me, it's a bit easier to read. So what is the new story? I'm going to use our document here as an example. And this is my name. And I'll do it in Spanish. You guys will know what it's saying, but I don't. No, actually, I do have the English version, so I know exactly what I'm doing. All right, so that is the name that I've entered in for 1-1. University information display. Okay. Now I need to put in the description of what I want. Well, here is the who, the what, and the why. For the student, I want to identify all available universities so I can make an informed decision. Very simple. Voila, there it is. In our case, there are no associated features. Typically, we talk about that later on. We need to put them into the system first before we can evaluate associated features. The owner, if you click that, hit your down arrow. In this environment, if you see the bottom right-hand corner that's shaded, you can hit the down arrow to see if there's something I can select from. Again, the bottom right-hand corner, if it's shaded, you can click it. And if there's something for you to select from, then you can do it. When is it due? Now, this is not a required field, but let's go ahead and fill in some information. Let's say that it's required by Halloween. So that's spooky. All right, I hope you got my joke. All right, so here, you don't have to put a due date, but at some point you do, working as part of the team, but it's not a required field. Now let's select the complexity, high, medium, or large. So remember, or high, medium, or low. So remember, based upon our, where did it go? Oh, here it is. All right, based upon our criteria here, business value, if we're going to determine if it's high, medium, or low. So in our case, it's high. It's the foundation for informed student decisions. So we want to come here and select high. Now we need to prioritize it. Typically, if it's high, it's something that we need done this iteration, or we need it done soon. So we'll take a look here, and the priority, it's not in the future. It's not a good to have. It's not a nice to have. It's a must have. All right. Sometimes we do add user stories that may not be implemented in the future for the next version, or we're waiting for some technology that may not be released for 6 months. but you want to put it into the system. In this case, though, this is a core user story that we need, and it's a must have. It's not a nice to have. It's not a future enhancement. It's something we must have in order for my application to be built. It's part of the critical path, is another way to look at it. I can attach any information. I may want to attach the whole conversation that I had with Peter, just so that people will know, well, I didn't come up with this on my own. It was based on a conversation. You may have some existing documents from some of the legacy applications that you worked on, and that information was used to determine how to build this new automated system. You can attach information. The next component you see is acceptance criteria. We built the acceptance criteria. I can add the new criteria. All right, so now come over, here's my acceptance criteria. It's four lines of information. I can cut, paste, and it's added. Okay. Any additional information that I want to add there? Oh, no, it creates additional information for me. Pulse, I may want to tell my team I have added the first user story. So something like that. I can start a conversation. I'm ready to work with the team. Right? So it's done, or maybe it's probably need to review because we don't know if it's met the definition of done yet. Okay. Oh, where'd it go? Oh no, it didn't save it. All right, let's go back and try it again. Why did it not save it? I probably should have hit save first and then gone back to update it. So nothing is there. So let's go back to stories and let's add. Well, there's nothing wrong with doing it again, doing it a second time. All right, let's try it again. I'll do it a little faster. So this is the name of the story. Here's my description, who, what, why. Owner, hit the down arrow. My name pops in. It's due at the end of the month. Complexity, we're going to say hi. It's a must have. I have no attachments. My acceptance criteria. Paste it, check it. Now I'm going to save it this time. There we go. Now it showed up as a new story. And I could continue on. I could do another user story. I could go to the second epic and I could put in the user story for the officer. Let's go ahead and do that just so that you can see two different user stories. So let's go and add another user story. Very simple process. But once it's in the system, the Pega environment can create documentation from all of this. It's very fascinating what it can create for you. All right, so in this case, duplicate application check. Duplicate application check, that is the name of my new story. Here is my user story. Who's doing it? The officer. What are we doing? We want to automatically check for duplicate applications. Why do we want to do that? So that students can't submit multiple applications. That is a well-formed user story, a well-formed user story. I'll hit the down arrow, due date, I'll put that at the same date. The complexity, I believe we had that complexity as high also, so it's going to be a must-have. The acceptance criteria, we'll add the acceptance criteria. And I have 2 successful user stories created for my team going forward. All right, thumbs up. Do you understand what your mission is? You know how to add a user story to the platform. Create user stories, add them to your spreadsheet. Okay. Sounds great. All right, so that's it, I believe, for today. As I mentioned before, some days we'll take the whole 2 hours, some days 30 minutes, but that's enough information, I believe, to get you started on completing this user story. So read through the use case, listen to the first 12 minutes of the video, and then you can drop into download the template, create your 10 user stories. Going forward. Then after that, later on today or this weekend, then you can listen to the longer version of it. So I'll talk about that for our next session this evening. I'll see you guys this evening, a little bit later, right? It's 7:30 for you guys. Let's look at the calendar. That's why I have to look at it. So Thursday, yes. So it's 7:30 for you guys. I'll see you at 7:30. For me, it's 9:30. And don't forget our goal. I want to iterate. We have, 10 more weeks? We want to make sure that we pass our 2 certifications. So study hard, do the work that needs to be done, do the quiz questions at the end of each module that you work on in Pega Academy. Complete all of the challenges so you can get your 5 badges. And the last 2 weeks, we'll do the AI. We'll concentrate on the AI. But of course, as we're going through Pega, you are getting the generative AI and the features. You should have listened to those yesterday and maybe some today. So any questions? Anyone have any questions before we sign off? Major goal is to work on those user stories. And you have the 4 essays that you have to complete. That's it. Thank you for your time and attention. And I'll see you later on tonight. Have a wonderful day. All right, let me stop the recording.